Welcome to Report from Duggan Mountain for part 2 of our discussion with David Thrussell. It's April 2024 and we're still alive, believe it or not. We survived COVID. Hang on there, David. We're unvaccinated, mate. How did we survive? Stick around and listen. All right, we're here with David for part 2 of our discussion. So go ahead. What were we talking about?
Very interesting.
I think I mentioned Zionism, mate. But
hold on.
I got away with it, though.
Hold that thought. I think what you were getting to just near the end there was very interesting.
Yep.
You were talking about this group. I've heard vague rumours about it, but I don't know much about it.
Yep,
right, I didn't know much about it. All I saw in the press was discussions of whether it was a good idea or a bad idea. I didn't find out any other information about it. It was very interesting. But see, that's a very interesting point.
Yep.
Divide and rule.
Yeah.
It's always divide and rule.
Yeah.
Okay. The so-called left and the so-called right, I think they're both traps. Okay. I consider myself unaffiliated. But the greatest danger for the controllers, for the elite controllers, the cabal, the globalists, is that people realise that they have far more in common than what they think.
Well, I invited Clementine Ford on Sam Newman's show. You know what I mean? I thought this would be great. Which would be amusing, you know?
I think strategically is absolutely the right thing to do.
Exactly, of
conversation.
Course.
This is what we
Sam
need.
Was into it, but Clementine's not into it, so there you go.
Well, I can't.
She'd probably get cancelled if she
should probably get cancelled.
Yeah, she probably would.
Because it's the last thing they want, isn't it? You know,
people
supposedly these mortal enemies of each other going, oh, actually, we've got a lot in common.
That's right.
You know, we don't want hospitals bombed.
No.
We don't want babies murdered.
No.
Actually, we want our kids just to grow up okay and just go about your own stuff unmolested and have an all right life and whatever.
Speaking of that, we've got P. Diddy coming down the, it seems to be the latest. They call him the Black Epstein, I mean, he's got human trafficking. It looks like his neighbour came out and said, there's all these underage people going in there. And obviously Candace Owens, of course, got she got canned from the Daily, it was called the Daily Wire, which was Ben Shapiro's pro-Zionist network. And she obviously stood up for Palestinians. And bye-bye.
Well, Daily Wire, or as I call it, the Daily Mossad.
Yes, Daily Mossad.
Take the choice, I don't know much about the Diddy thing, I haven't followed that at all.
I've looked into it, but basically it appears as if, and look, this is what we all knew. I mean, when they shut down Epstein Island, and there've been people who've said it, look, do you really think that's the only island? You know what I mean? Like, do you really think that's the only operation like this? And the whole Pizzagate thing was that they'd found something similar to Epstein that was operating out of Washington, D.C. Now, whether it was operating directly from that pizza shop or was the people involved, because this guy who owned that pizza shop had a whole bunch of properties, none of which were investigated.
As the saying always goes, don't believe something until it's officially denied.
Exactly,
So when the first thing you hear in the mainstream media is the denial, that's debunked, that never happened, you know that there's some smoke and there's a fire.
And you saw that Francis Key Bridge fell down. It was pretty unusual, Did you see that?
Odd. I don't have a strong opinion about it, but definitely odd.
Inside job, we don't know yet.
Well, the thing is, we live in such odd times, and is this just an artifact of the fact that we're surrounded by media? I don't know, that everyone's plugged in 24/7, because there seems to be this sort of torrent, this deluge of weirdness around the clock, and weird things can happen, and 2 hours later you've forgotten. Because the next thing comes down the pipe. Now, is that a sort of media fog situation? Because I do think, and I've said this before, but I'll say it again, I do think the fact that we're all embedded in this sort of 24/7 media kind of culture.
And obviously everyone's connected through their phones.
Well, yes, and I think it's a disaster for us as a people, and it's a great way to manipulate the public and to control the public mind. And, I mean, I've mentioned this vaguely in the past, but I think it's a really interesting point. I've noticed, but I don't think a lot of people have noticed. Now, Project MK Ultra,
of course,
50s and 60s CIA
it's kind of like involving trauma and stuff,
all that sort of stuff. And it's always spicy.
Yeah, I've got a couple of books on it,
And all that sort of, that's exactly right.
Fascinating.
Exactly in the same era, from the same people, Department of Defense, DARPA, CIA, you get the birth of the internet. Right? Okay, so my theory is, that, they tried, drugging up people and filming prostitutes with people and LSD and blah, 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 and whatever, mind control and blah, 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 whatever. But they realised it was all a bit too hands-on and it wasn't really perfect for manipulating big amounts of people. But there was this other thing that they were working on, which developed into the internet, which was far better at manipulating masses and masses of people.
Well, I think the way that, this technology. I'm shooting this on my iPhone today, so but like I think obviously young people have access to all this stuff now, and I think you see you hear of the ways that various apps are like feeding them stuff about their their weight so they become anorexic. It's like this weird evil algorithms are feeding them back negative materials. They're obviously also sexualizing them. They're filling it with like LGBT and transgender propaganda. It's being fed to young people. It's like which is a kind of like MK Ultra almost writ large. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Because they use these devices as kind of trauma machines, and they get the people young. Because most parents don't know what their kids are looking at, and God knows what they are.
Yeah, absolutely. I absolutely agree, I think your term, trauma mind control machines writ large is a pretty good term, really. It's MK Ultra on a mass scale.
That's what it is.
On essentially an unimaginable scale.
Yeah,
so
and feeding them war footage. Like, I would sometimes get war footage from Ukraine, and it was like dead Ukrainians like having their faces eaten off by animals. And I go, how the hell did I just get that? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and I'm an adult who's like seen a lot of terrible things, online or in movies or whatever. So like, God knows what children make of that. Suddenly.
And I think the point is really interesting. This sort of trauma-based mind control. There were projects called, I think there was one called Project Monarch.
Monarch.
Which is about traumatizing children and developing multiple personalities in them.
And this is why you're seeing the they, them. You know what I mean? Unbelievable, isn't it? It just makes sense. Are we onto something or what, mate? We should have a show on the ABC if they let us.
They won't have
They won't, though.
They won't.
You can get Clem Ford on, Sam Newman, it'd be great. It'd be a real discussion.
Look, honestly, this is what we're missing is absolute discussion between people who have different points of view, and this is exactly what they don't want.
Isn't that what we do?
This is why everyone is locked into their echo chambers, screaming their crazy bullshit at each other, and across the community, across society, there's no broader discussion happening.
No, exactly. And that's
it's a disaster, and I think it's a deliberate disaster.
It is, and I think, that was the one thing that I really noticed the last 30 years, because in the 80s, you would watch a show and you would have people of radically different perspectives talking, and I just figured that was normal and would be around forever, but it's not. I mean, every now and then you might get the odd piece from Four Corners or something. There was a piece that Four Corners did when they were embedded with Russian soldiers, where it pretty much just spoke the Russian perspective with only a few, basically, that's all wrong and it's all going to be pro. Occasionally they had the editorial guy, but really, reading between the lines, it was you were hearing the Russian perspective on it, and that was interesting. And I thought, wow, that was actually a Four Corners I liked. And there was one also about Bibi that was incredibly critical recently, which I haven't seen. So anyway, every now and then.
Yeah, but surely that's just the bait. They throw you the bait of the odd little thing that steps out of the Overton window just to validate all the other garbage that they're pumping into your head.
The weird thing about the whole Israel and Gaza thing is I don't know any left-wing people that support Israel. I know some right-wing people who are pro-Zionist, because of Fox News is pro-Zionist, and so is obviously the Daily the Daily Wire, and they have obviously managed to at least get a fraction or an element of the right wing that is pro-Israel. But I don't know any left-wing people. But obviously there are some.
And isn't the basic theory, correct me if I'm wrong, of this democracy thing is that it represents the will of the people? Well, I can tell you now, despite all the manipulations over the years and all the propaganda, the vast bulk of the people left to their own devices, do not like the idea of murdering babies. Bombing hospitals and killing children and all these sort of things. Okay,
and when that's criticised, you're hiding behind. You're saying, we're the victims because of World War II. Something happened 80 fucking years ago.
But I'm going broader on this way broader because this democracy project, which I'm just going to call it's a complete fraud. Okay, we have to start having honest conversations about this. All the elections are rigged. They've been rigged for
What about the yes/no vote? We won that one.
Well, I think they just handed that over because they knew it was going to look too suspect.
That was too. There were too many people I think supported no.
But the idea of this democracy project is it's meant to represent the will of the people, and yet you have so many examples. In fact, you have example after example after example where the will of the people is not represented in politics.
That is true. That is true.
And that's
and obviously even when you get a Trump, you still get a Trump that's essentially
as
pro-Israel as you can get. I mean, if he's so pro-America and pro-America first, why is he bowing down to Israel the way he does? So, anyway, maybe we'll continue it in part 3.